Hello and welcome to the USA Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Urbano, joined today by the Coach Don Showalter, 9-time USA Basketball gold medalist head coach, hired by the USA Basketball Youth Division as the Director of Coach Development in May 2016. And this summer, Coach Showalter will lead the men's U17 World Cup team for the final time. Say it ain't so, Coach, as they journey to Argentina looking for yet another FIBA World Championship. Welcome, Coach. And before we get into this month's podcast topics, tell us a little bit about your expectations for this summer and from the incredibly talented group of players expected to be at camp in June.
Yeah, well, first of all, this is this will be my 10th summer of coaching our U16 and U17 teams, and obviously when I first was asked to coach these teams, it was going to be for a 2-year stint, and it kind of became up to 10 years. So I've been really fortunate and just appreciate everything that USA Basketball has done to allow me to coach. But I think it's time to move on a little bit. I have a lot of time to spend with my new position as coach development. So this will be the last time for me to coach one of the national team, but I'll still be involved in many ways with that. Our expectations are, obviously high. I mean, nobody expects us to get anything but a gold medal. So sometimes that can lead to a little bit more pressure than you'd like for kids, as well as they come in. But we have a really good group of U16 players last year. Might have been the best group overall of U16 players we've had. And I think that goes to show that we did a really good job of scouting the kids and then picking our top 12. But we have also about 20 other players that are going to come in and really make a run for a position on the top 12. I've said many times that Justice Winslow is a great example where he came in, got cut as a U16 player, and then made the team as a U17 player. Now he's playing with the Miami Heat and making some good dollars there. And he often says that he probably wouldn't be where he is today had we not cut him as a U16 player. I'm not sure I believe that, but those kids really get motivated, and I think it's really good that we have the situation where we are right now, because players really want to play with USA Basketball. I mean, that's a goal they have. I go places and players say, I can't wait for the training camp, so those kind of things have helped our competition and really helped us get in the best players.
Well, we certainly look forward to this summer's FIBA World Championship events. And as we get into this month's podcast, our questions for today are mostly geared to basketball coaches and the coaching profession as a whole. And Coach Showalter, you and I have talked a lot about the expectations that are placed on coaches at all levels. Obviously, most players and fans see what's required of coaches during games or practices. But in looking at what's required from coaches in the offseason or the preseason, what are some of the lesser-known responsibilities coaches take on? And what are coaches then expected to do to ensure they meet the goals for his or her team?
That's really a loaded question, because there's a lot of responsibilities that go on behind the scenes outside the season that parents and people just don't really understand. I find out traveling the country that there's a lot of coaches that are in the coaching the game for 5 years or less, 0, 1, 2, just starting out. They're very energetic and they really want to be in coaching. And then I find out that we have a lot of coaches across the country that have been coaching 15 years or more. They kind of establish themselves. They know what to do. They know the responsibilities. They know how to make a program. But it's that 5 to 15 year range where coaches seem to drop off a little bit. They don't maybe understand what all goes into it. So the responsibilities that coaches take on, during the season are many, with film breakdown and building your culture and trying to establish what's best for your team and dealing with parents and all those things. And then once your season ends or outside your season, the responsibilities don't stop. I mean, you're preparing for next year. You're preparing for a new spring season, a summer season. I say season, but they're really, skill development. What are we going to do during those seasons for skill development? That's really a big responsibility there. So, I always said during the 42 years I coached basketball, there probably was not a day that goes by where you don't think about something with your team or basketball or how to make your players better. So responsibilities can be huge, and it can be tough on young coaches when they get into that aspect. They don't quite understand how many responsibilities they do have. And I think the older coaches have learned to kind of guide themselves through those responsibilities with help from assistant coaches. And then that middle group, I think they're still trying to find out what's going on. So that's kind of the way I look at it, and I think the responsibilities probably keep getting more and more a little bit, especially, coaches, if they teach 7 or 8 periods a day and come to a practice, they get a lot more money for teaching than they do coaching, but they get fired for coaching as opposed to teaching.
So, and along with that and everything you just discussed, Coach, running drills that are applicable to your players and their talent levels is one issue that new coaches often have difficulty with. This was a major reason last year you went out to the U.S. Olympic Training Center here in Colorado Springs and shot a series of development videos we call our tips, skills, and drills content. And if you're looking for an archive of drills that you can implement into your practice, head on over to usab.com and you'll find videos for players and coaches of all levels. Now, moving on to our next question. This is a topic that I've wanted to discuss with you since we first met, Coach. Having been a high school coach for 42 years and a 9-time USA Basketball Developmental Coach of the Year award winner, you have a perspective that not a lot of coaches are able to obtain. You've coached teams where the talent might be scarce and you rely on what players are enrolled at your school. And, of course, you've coached teams that are made up of the most talented players across the country. Each situation presents its own challenges, and while nobody would ever say it's harder to coach a team loaded with talent, there are specific difficulties or challenges that come with that. So when you look at the differences in those situations, what were the biggest challenges you faced at the high school level, and then what did you come to find to be the biggest difficulties coaching a USA Basketball national team?
Yeah, I get that question a lot as well. From a lot of different people. But, high school coaches really have to deal with different talent every year. And I think it's really a challenge. If you're a good high school coach, you have to take a look at what your talent level is, what your players can do, what their skill level is. And then you have to, as a coach, decide what's best for them, what's going to give them the best chance to have success, both offensively, defensively, culture-wise. So, we're talking college coaches, they just recruit who they want. And so they don't really have to adjust much from year to year. But high school coaches, I think, probably are the purest form of a coach when you talk about making adjustments. Some years and we've all been there as a high school coach, so your listeners can really gauge in on this. But you have to really take what you have every year, and many times parents don't understand that you're not the same team you were. And even though you might have 4 starters back from last year, that 5th starter or that 5th guy, 6th guy, 7th guy who you don't have was a big part of that team, and now you don't have them, so you have to make adjustments. And I think that's one of the challenges, and that's one of the reasons I like high school coaching, because it really challenges you as a coach and as a person to put together the best team possible. And then I flipped over to the other side of it where I coached 12 high elite players that are going to be high-level college or NBA players with our national team. And I think the biggest thing we had established there is we had playing different roles for the kids was really different. Players they're always used to being the best player on their team, having the ball in their hands all the time, taking a final shot or shooting the ball whenever they really wanted to because they were the best shooter on the floor. So now that mindset is to change that in each player, in that they're playing for something bigger than what they're accustomed to. They have to adjust their role to fit in with other players, and we find out that some players just really have a difficult time fitting in with other really good players because they're the best player on their high school team. So in our training camp, a lot of factors go into, how a player adjusts, and I think we have to really communicate that to the players during our training camp. Hey, if you want to make our team, you can't shoot the ball every time, or you're going to be, your role is playing defense, your role is rebounding, and fortunately we've been really good at players adjusting to their roles that make the team. And to be real honest with you, the 12 that make the team understand their roles, and sometimes the players that are better than them can't adjust. So that's a real challenge as well.
Absolutely. One word that you brought up a couple times today, and that I've seen you when you're with your teams, you mention often, is culture. Creating a culture, establishing that culture. If you're a new coach, what are the ways that you can create that culture and start to build that culture with either a new set of players or simply if you're a first-time coach?
Yeah, culture, I think culture is a term that may be a little bit thrown around, overused these days because, 10 years ago, you never heard the word culture, but you had one. My definition of culture is simply how you do things on a daily basis. And so, how you conduct your practice session, how you run your drills, what your expectations are for your players, how you hold them accountable. That's all part of your culture. And, you may not, that culture, I always say you have to fight for that every day because your kids come every day with maybe a different mindset. Somebody had a problem with their girlfriend or got in trouble in class, and so they're coming to practice with a little different mindset than they did the day before. So that culture is really important. I think it's important for the players that they know what your culture is. They feel comfortable with your culture. They come to a practice and they know how practice is going to go. They know you as a coach. And so I think spending a lot of time off the court with players is really necessary as well. Believe it or not, that coaches are a lot different sometimes when they're not coaching as when they're coaching. And I think players need to see us in that environment where, we're this way when we coach, but we're also human beings. We have families, and some kids don't quite understand that. Those are really pieces that go into building a culture. And I think you, as a young coach, you kind of have to dissect what you want as a culture, and then of course the second part of that is getting your players to buy into that. And that's one of the things on our national team that we really spend a lot of time on is, they have to buy into what our culture is. They have to say, they have to think it's the best for them. Fortunately, we've been very good with that, and the kids that make the team, I think, really appreciate our culture with USA Basketball.
Absolutely. And one of the great aspects of being a coach is that you get to connect with and meet coaches from around the country. And over the years of being involved with basketball, I'm sure you've given and received a ton of advice and tips on how to advance in the coaching profession. So let's end our discussion today with this. What would you say is your best advice to a coach that is looking to continue or move up in the coaching profession, and perhaps finish with the best piece of advice you've ever received during your career?
Great question. And, going to our USA Basketball Academies, which, by the way, we have 8 of them this year, that's one of the things I talk about as well. I mean, I have coaches that come up after the academy and say, how do I get to where you are? How do I get to be a coach at the next level? Or just how do I continue my coaching career? And I give them a couple really definite things to consider. I think, first of all, they got to make sure that they are doing the very best at where they are. If they're coaching a 6th grade team, then they better do the very best at that 6th grade team. If they're coaching a junior high team, high school, it doesn't matter. Because if something else opens up and they're not doing a good job with the team they have, they're probably not going to get another chance to coach something different. I use that in my case where, I had a very great opportunity with USA Basketball early on in my career, 18, 19 years ago, and that was something that I really took, hopefully, and I did take advantage of that. I was prepared, and I did the very best I could, and had I not done a good job, of course, it wouldn't have led to other things. So I think that's the first thing coaches need to do. I think second thing, they need to attend clinics, camps. Coming to our academies, USA Basketball Academies, is a great way to network. A lot of times you network and you find out what positions are open and how to get how to speak to longtime coaches, how to communicate with them. I think is really an advantage. So strengthening your networking is really important. And then I think a couple other things that go along with it. You got to work hard, be energetic, show passion. I always say coaches need to bring two things to the table every day: enthusiasm and passion. And once they do that, I think things kind of fall in place. But they also have to be patient. It just doesn't happen overnight. I actually volunteered with USA Basketball for 18 years before I got the full-time job with coach development. So it's not something that happens overnight. And I think one of the best things I took as a young coach, I worked John Wooden's camps for many years at UCLA, and my high school coach and my college coach were both Hall of Famers. But they always just said, be prepared. When opportunities exist, you need to be prepared for those opportunities. And so I always kind of had that in the back of my mind. If something opens up, I want to be prepared. And then the second, they always told me, you bring your enthusiasm, bring passion for what you do. And whoever is looking at you for another position will certainly see that.
I think those are things that all coaches can appreciate and implement into their own actions, and it's hard to think success won't follow if you embrace that message. And as we mentioned earlier, this month we're really focusing our discussion on the coaching profession, but the USA Basketball podcast will be wide-ranging and include topics from around the entire world of basketball as we continue each month. We hope you join us again in February and subscribe to our podcast, subscribe to our YouTube page, and of course, follow us across the social media world to keep up on all things USA Basketball. Thanks for listening in, and a big thank you to Coach Don Showalter for joining us today. This is the USA Basketball Podcast.